right, a very fun Sunday of wildcard NFL action has come to a conclusion. We saw a blowout game in the Bills and Broncos that we're going to talk about at the end of this video. We're going to talk about the Eagles Packers in the middle of this video, give you guys my thoughts on that game. But of course, we have to start this video with the Washington Commanders going on the road in Tampa, winning 23-20. This was a surprising outcome to me, not a surprising outcome to everyone. What this game really truthfully came down to was Jayden Daniels outplayed Baker Mayfield, in my humble opinion. And I get it, when we go to the stats, some of the stats are in favor of Baker. And it's not to say that Baker didn't have a good game, but Jayden Daniels gives you that little bit extra special, that little bit extra, I can be the best player on the field and I can take over games. And you saw it on the third down run to pick up the first down to set up the game-winning field goal. And you saw it all throughout this game. And I've compared many great quarterbacks to this, but specifically, you see it with Lamar Jackson and you're seeing it with Baker Mayfield, with Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels is like a point guard out there, and an elite one at that. The game is controlled by Jayden Daniels. And when you're the team with the player that controls the game, you are very dangerous. Now, obviously, when we look ahead, Washington has a very tall task against Detroit. And that is an elite offense that the Commanders are going to ask Jayden Daniels to keep up with. But that's next week. Tonight, Jayden did enough to take out a Buccaneers team that played some really good football. Whether it was the third down conversion, running early in this game and picking up first downs, making throws on the run, limiting mistakes, being a high-level passer. That deep ball early on to Terry McLaurin, the ability to make that throw and the ability to break a tackle and pick up that third down run at the end of the game, that is what makes Jayden Daniels so dangerous, so scary, so good. And that is the reason that today, the Washington Commanders, a team with the number 2 pick in the draft last year, have gone from that team to a 12-5 team with a playoff win. Now, it's not to, we don't want to jump the gun because CJ Stroud did this last year with the Texans. It wasn't the same record, but they went from the number 2 pick to winning a playoff game. I think you have to be a very high-level quarterback to do this. And I think we need to have some serious conversations this offseason about where Jayden Daniels ranks in the echelon of quarterbacks. Because, with Jordan Love's performance today, with Justin Herbert's performance yesterday, with Jayden Daniels' performance today, we're starting to get a really interesting mix of guys from, call it 5 to 12. And the order could very well be determined by what we've seen and what we haven't seen from guys in the playoffs. Now, let's hop into this game specifically. Commanders win 23-20. As I mentioned, Jayden Daniels, 24 of 35, 268 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, and a 110 passer rating. But Baker Mayfield, 15 of 18 for 185, 2 touchdowns, a 146.5 passer rating. Baker had that one really excellent 18-yard run. I thought Baker left it all out there tonight. The Washington offense was just that much better. And I want to go to the team stats to highlight something I said to you guys about Jayden Daniels controls the game. Look at the time of possession. 11 extra minutes. Sustaining drives. Long drives. Efficient drives. The Washington Commanders, they killed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here tonight. It was death by 1,000 cuts. And the Commanders have done that all throughout the year. This Kingsbury offense, the game plan has been early on from when Daniels was adjusting to now. Let's get to second and manageable. Let's get to third and short. Let's do it again. And that's been the game plan. We'll take our deep shots here and there. But generally speaking, it is play for the next down and play for the next down to be manageable. And a lot of NFL teams could benefit from maybe not always doing that, but getting into that mindset from time to time when the offense is struggling. The way that Kingsbury and Daniels operate this offense, it's very hard for them to struggle because they so often don't get behind the sticks. And you saw that here tonight. They were just a little bit better. Shout out to De'Ami Brown, 5 for 89 and a touchdown, potentially the game of his career. Terry McLaurin, 7 for 89 and a touchdown. Scary Terry showed up. I thought Austin Eckler was pretty big tonight for this team. Only 50 total yards, but a very assuring presence. For the Buccaneers, their offense showed up. Mike Evans, to me, proved why he's a Hall of Fame level wide receiver. As if 11 straight seasons of 1,000 yards wasn't enough, 7 for 92 and 1 touchdown. Tampa played a good game. Ultimately, though, what it came down to me, was Jayden Daniels being just a little bit better than Baker Mayfield. And the Washington Commanders offense being a little bit more efficient and being able to control the ball just a little bit more than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. And this is one of those things when I talked about why my ceiling on the Buccaneers was a playoff win without Chris Godwin. And why maybe they need to consider paying him this offseason. Because, they didn't have another really dependable guy. Does McMillan take that leap? Maybe. But to make it second and manageable, pick up the third downs at a high clip. What was the third down percentage? I'm interested. Third down efficiency, 8 of 15, 5 of 9, 3 of 5. Just really outdid them. Overall, the Commanders did. Commanders, one of the most efficient team on fourth down all year. And again, it's because they always get it to a manageable spot. Washington moves on. They'll be playing Detroit next week. I believe that game will be the Saturday night game. I believe we're looking at Texans-Chiefs, Commanders-Lions on Saturday. Sunday will be Eagles versus to be determined. And the Sunday night game, 6:30 start, of course, will be Ravens-Bills. Let us hop into Eagles versus Packers. So when it comes to the Eagles versus Packers, the Philadelphia Eagles picked up the 22-10 win. A bit of a wonky score there, happens with a missed extra point. This was a defensive battle through and through. And I said this in the preview video, and I'll say it again now. In my opinion, the Philadelphia Eagles have the best overall defense in the entire NFL at this point. You could argue the Chiefs. I do believe that. The Ravens, the way that they've come along, the Texans with that pass rush for sure. But the Eagles, top to bottom, have been the best defense. They allowed the least amount of yards per game. I think it's a very telling stat. I think they're very solid at all three levels. And man, do they really make you work for everything. They made Green Bay work their asses off today. And Green Bay didn't have it. And some of it was due to the Eagles, of course, and just playing really good football. Bond, Slay, Quinyon Mitchell, Jalen Carter. The pass rush was relevant. Nolan Smith had a really big day. And some of it is just what I said about Green Bay and why I didn't believe in him. The lack of an alpha wide receiver. And don't get me wrong, Christian Watson tearing his ACL the last week of the season, that's fucking brutal. Jayden Reed, Romeo Doubs both getting hurt today. Like, the injuries definitely snowballed for Green Bay. And at the end of the game, when they're trying to make a drive to make this game competitive and keep it alive, you're throwing the ball at the end of the game to Malik Heath. It's not a great sign. But I will say this. I still think that there is a natural flaw in Green Bay's we have 4 wide receiver ones. I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, but when you tell me that, what it tells me is you have 0 wide receiver ones. The Vikings will never tell you they have multiple wide receiver ones. The Cowboys wouldn't. The Bengals wouldn't. Hell, even the Eagles across the way with Brown and Smith wouldn't. You know who the alpha is in the room. If somebody's good enough to be an alpha. And I just don't think that's the case in Green Bay. The alpha weapon is Josh Jacobs, who was excellent today for Green Bay. But ultimately, this game came down to Philly having a better defense ever so slightly today, but overall, I would say a better defense. The Eagles not committing turnovers and the Packers committing them. The Packers had 4 turnovers in this game. The Eagles had 0. It is almost an impossible feat in the NFL to win a game in which you lost the turnover battle 4-0. And in the playoffs, mistakes like that are magnified. And they were certainly magnified today. Let's pull up the stats here. Like I said, Eagles win 22-10. Jordan Love, 20 of 33, 212 yards, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, a 41.5 passer rating. Similar to what I said about Justin Herbert, we need to have a conversation about Jordan Love. Everybody was ready to anoint this guy a top 10 quarterback last year. And I got some pushback for saying I wouldn't put him above Jared Goff because of the mobility that Love has and the arm and, the flashy play on the run. And I said the guy is a guaranteed turnover a game. It's tough to win in the NFL when you know that your quarterback is going to surrender the ball to the other team probably once a game. It's just tough. And I do think some of that comes from a lack of having a true wide receiver one. Whereas on the other side, Jalen Hurts, I get it, not the flashiest of games, but 13 of 21, 131 passing yards, not great, but 2 touchdowns, no picks, and a 111 passer rating. You could say what you want about Jalen Hurts, and you could say that the team is clearly a run-first team with Saquon Barkley. No disputing that there. But what Jalen Hurts consistently does is, since the first month of the season, the guy doesn't turn the ball over, the guy is efficient with the plays, and the guy wins. If you had an offensive line full of what should be 4 Pro Bowlers, but is only 3, Mailata snub, and Saquon Barkley, who just had 2,000 rushing yards, you would run the ball first too. But when the Eagles needed a play, Jalen Hurts was able to make it. That touchdown by Dallas Goedert was absolutely disgusting. The stiff arm that just never ended. But ultimately, this is a big person sport. And what I mean by that is it's won and lost in the trenches from time to time. This was a very trench-heavy game. And I got a text from one of my buddies at halftime. How do you think this game goes? How do you think it ends? Eagles had many opportunities in the first half to really nail in the coffin. They didn't. And I said, the Eagles have the better offensive line. The Packers' offensive line is hurt, so I trust the Eagles' defensive line more. The Eagles are going to win in the trenches. They're going to lean on Green Bay. They're going to eventually wear down this Packers team. And that's what happened. Saquon could have broken a run at the end and made it 29-10. He doesn't. Goes down. Philly gets the win. Divisional game. Headed to Philadelphia. With the Commanders win tonight, it's either going to be Minnesota or the Rams traveling there. If you're rooting for the Eagles, I feel like you'd probably rather the Rams because of what you've done against them already this year. It was a pretty dominating effort. But you win a playoff game in which A.J. Brown had 1 catch for 10 yards on 3 targets. If I had told you that was going to be A.J. Brown's stat line going into this game, you probably would have had some real question marks. But, so be it. Looking at some of these team stats, the time of possession, pretty close. I thought Philly would dominate this a little bit more. They didn't. The penalties, fairly close. It was pretty close box score wise. But at the end of the day, like I mentioned, 4 turnovers to 0 will put ice on a game. And even if you want to say that opening fumble shouldn't have been a turnover, Jordan Love still threw 3 interceptions in this game. And possessions matter so much. And ultimately, Philly was more efficient with theirs, wasn't turning the ball over, and when they were punting it, they're putting the Packers against the wall against a defense that is the best in the NFL in terms of just pure coverage. At the end of the day, that's a winning formula. And at the end of the day, was this a sloppy game? Yes. But the Eagles are built to win sloppy games. Great O-line, a real run game, a great defense. Sometimes it's going to be sloppy. I didn't think the Eagles played a particularly great game of football today, and they walked out with a double-digit win. It's a real legit Super Bowl contender. For Green Bay, there's a bright future, but if the Jets are going to move on from Devontae Adams, I think a reunion in Green Bay would be perfect. He can come in and be a legit alpha and really fill out this wide receiver room to put guys in a much better spot to succeed. So Green Bay, bright future, but some work to do. Philly, on to the divisional round. And then the Buffalo Bills took care of business, 31-7 victory over the Denver Broncos. Don't lie, when Bo Nix hit that 40-yard touchdown to Troy Franklin to open up the game, you were like, oh shit, is something about to happen here? And then Buffalo, of course, scores 31 straight unanswered points. Josh Allen has a phenomenal game, always dominates wild card weekend. I mean, this was just Denver was boxing out of their weight class in this game. It's just that simple. Denver is one of those 7 seeds who, you know, when the playoffs used to have 6 seeds previously and there was 2 teams on the bye, you missed getting some fringe teams in that should be in, but you also prevented some fringe teams that maybe could have gotten in that didn't really belong from not getting in. Perfect example, the Packers, who we just talked about, they're a 7 seed who, hey, like that's a really good team. They deserve to be a playoff team. The Broncos, they're a 7 seed who, this was a great year for Denver, but they had no business in a game with Buffalo. It's just the truth of the matter at this point. And today's game showed it. And we head to this box score, and I thought Bo Nix played fine for a playoff debut. 13-22, 144 yards, a touchdown, a 93.7 passer rating. He also led the team in rushing with 43 yards. Like, Bo Nix was solid today. But you saw some of Denver's limitations offensively. You know, you take away the one bomb to Troy Franklin, and it's Courtland Sutton and just some guys. And that was kind of the overwhelming thought on Denver. They have a really solid pass rush, led the NFL in sacks. Pat Surtain, one of, if not the best corner in football. But this offense will not have the ability to keep up with elite teams in the playoffs. And they didn't. Josh Allen, 20 of 26 for 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 135.4 passer rating. James Cook, 23 carries, 120 yards, and a touchdown. The firepower that Buffalo has just outclasses Denver in every way. Denver's defense is better, but when you have Bo Nix versus Josh Allen, and Josh Allen's got more weapons, this is going to be the outcome 10 times out of 10. And I think Denver is ahead of schedule. Nobody thought they were going to make the playoffs. They have a bright future, whereas Buffalo, it's Super Bowl or bust. It really is. And I get it. I'm not saying if they lose to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship, people need to be fired or etc. But Buffalo's playing for a Lombardi. Denver was just happy to be here. And in, look at this fucking time of possession. 41-4-3 to 18-17. Denver couldn't sustain offensive drives. Buffalo could. Buffalo, Denver has a good defense, but Buffalo just being out there constantly and the weapon that Josh Allen is wore them out. And they get the win. And now we look ahead to what may be the best playoff game of all the NFL playoffs this year. Could be better than the Super Bowl Conference Championships as an individual game. This has Chiefs-Bills from a couple years ago written all over it in terms of excitement. The 13-second game is obviously the one I'm talking about there when I say that, but Bills hosting the Ravens. Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson. The top 2 MVP candidates squaring off in a playoff game. This is why we fucking love football. These two teams played early on in the season. Baltimore dominated, but the box score, the final score, makes it seem a little worse than it was. Buffalo was in it until that dreadful flea flicker play. Panicked and called a play that they didn't need to. And now Buffalo's at home, a shot at revenge. And in all likelihood, the winner has a date with Kansas City. And if Houston were to pull off the upset, then the winner is in the driver's seat to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. That is a game I cannot wait for. That is a game you cannot wait for if you love the NFL. But as always, those are just my reactions to these NFL playoff games. We'll be back up here tomorrow night to talk about the Vikings, Rams, get a more clear-cut, crisp divisional round, picture. A preview video will be going out next week. I think I also want to talk about Mike Vrabel going to the Patriots at some point, maybe at the end of tomorrow's video or on Tuesday. I want to talk about if the Steelers should move on from Mike Tomlin and why I think that's ludicrous just again, and Justin Herbert. And we got a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack. There might be a video up on the channel every day this upcoming week. So if you love the NFL, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're not already, hit the like button. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.